as adults, we're so conditioned, like, oh my gosh, if I make this mistake, if I do this thing, what's going to happen? And then we judge ourselves. And then we go into our little spiral of thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. I'm not worthy. Things are just never going to work out for me. But what if we embrace the fall?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MT and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, I'm going to give you a very special guest to embrace the suck in our lives. You know, those awful, terrible sucker punch moments in life, you know, the ones that knock you down, burn you up, or make you cringe so hard you wish you had a bad dream. Those moments. Because yes, those moments are the ones that we could run from or hide from, but those are also the moments that have our greatest opportunity of growth. And as we come into this new year of 2023, as we look through our lives and all the sucky things that have happened over the last couple of years, I know there's tons of things that have certainly happened in my life. It is this message and this particular framework you're going to learn on this podcast that I hope you will embrace to really know that those sucky moments are really moments for you to step in to the best version of you. For all of you who are new to this podcast, the Thrive State Podcast is really about bringing in the thought leaders, the ideas, the mindset, the habits for health, wealth, longevity, and peak performance. For all you dedicated Thrive State Podcast listeners, thank you and welcome back in. It is so good to know that there are people like you in our community that wants to work on themselves every single day to really become the best version, to become that thriving version of us. And if this podcast has given you value over the years, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. It will help the show grow. Now, today we have a very special guest because she's a very dear friend of mine. I actually met her in a personal development conference called A-Fest. I highly recommend you check them out. A-Fest is a conference that really combines Burning Man with TEDx or personal development, putting them together, bringing in speakers and a community to really allow people to experience life in a whole new different level. Check them out at mindvalley.com. Now, since meeting our guest 5 to 6 years ago, I've really gotten a chance to know her personally, and she lives what she preaches. She lives what she teaches. She's actually the founder of the Global Grit Institute, which is a mental health training platform for leaders and coaches, and the co-founder of the Dharma Coaching Institute, who have trained thousands of people live their best lives and to become thriving coaches in their own right. Dr. Neeta has actually helped thousands of people move past their heartbreaks, their failures, their disappointments. And after years of research and observing human behavior, of observing people in their worst moments and their best moments, being a mother, going through a lot of tragic loss, as you hear about in this podcast, Dr. Neeta really knows what it takes to get back up no matter what. She's also the best-selling author of 3 books, Emotional Grit, The Book of Coaching, and The Business Book of Coaching. And her new book is entitled, That Sucked, Now What? How to Embrace the Joy of Chaos and Find Magic in the Mess. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this conversation with Dr. Neeta Bhushan. Dr. Neeta Bhusan, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Oh my goodness. I just always love your radio announcer voice. It is just, it's like music to my ears.
It definitely turns on when I'm with good people and when we're doing situations like this. And sister, it has been, 5, 6 years since we have met. And
isn't that crazy?
The amazing journey I've been on, and through your support, I've been able to reach new heights of love, of growth. I just want to, send you my heartfelt thank you and gratitude, my sister.
Oh my gosh. Well, I receive it. You've been such a brother to me, and it's cool to see our paths, right? And I'm so excited to dive on this podcast with you because, I mean, coming from our states of medicine and just transcending. And I feel like we have a lot of similarities. So coming from Asian background, so it's going to be a juicy one.
Oh, it is going to be juicy. But before we dive into the meat, the people in the podcast are very familiar with something called the Five to Thrive. Five quick questions, game show style. And what I do is if you win this segment, you actually get a very healthy meal on me. I was recently over in your beautiful home where you took myself, my daughter, my beautiful fiance out to dinner. We would like to return the favor if you
Aw.
win the Five to Thrive. So my question to you, Dr. Neeta,
Okay.
are you ready to play the Five to Thrive?
I'm ready. Let's
All right.
do it. Oh my
30
God, I'm nervous.
seconds, 30-second answers most. First question for you is, what is your favorite childhood memory?
Mm, well, actually, many, but one in particular was when my mom took me out of school one day. And I was like so excited because she was like definitely one that worked a lot. And so I remember we had a little station wagon because hello, circa like 1990. Actually, it was like late 80s. I'm so dating myself. But yeah, and we went shopping and we got ice cream, and these were all of the things that like I didn't get to do. And so it's probably today one of my favorite memories because I never really got my mom alone.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Okay, very good. 1,000 points there. You're doing well. Question number two is, what is your favorite self-care routine or activity?
Oh, yes. So honestly, I love just biking by myself. And it's one of those exhilarating feelings. I actually picked up cycling and road biking back when I was right when I had my divorce, and I literally had to pick up the pieces and I wanted to do something for me. So I picked up road biking, and I was terrified because you had to like clip in those shoes that like attach to the bike, and many times I had like my that suck now what moments where the bike would, because I couldn't unlash myself or like detach myself off the bike, so I would fall over and it was terrifying. But when I got the hang of it, I'm like, oh my God, the breeze, and I
Mm,
can go fast, and it's just me, and
mm,
it's the wind. I mean, I don't nearly do it as much as I did, pre-kids, but
mm,
that's honestly my happy place. And to actually do it by the ocean or body of water, I mean, it's my favorite place to be.
Oh, I would love to bring that back for myself, Ian. But this brings me to question number three, 2,000 points so far, by the way, is what do
Yes.
you love most about being a mother?
Mm. Oh, the cuddles. The
Mm,
cuddles. And, I think being a mom, you honestly get to even reparent yourself. And that was big going back to, I think my first answer. I lost my mom really young at 16, and I became her caretaker when I was 10. And so to actually be a mom, but also in many ways reparent myself, the little girl that had to grow up early, and
yes.
I allow myself to play, get dirty, and get silly with my kids, because there's also that little Neeta, or the inner child in me that wants to play. So you give yourself permission to do all of those things, and you can be messy and you can feel joy in the chaos. And so I think that's probably my favorite moment.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, when you come up with these answers, I'm thinking we could like spend hours and hours and hours diving into each thing, inner child, and all these different aspects. So definitely check out her work when we're done with this podcast. She's got so much awesome content. Question number four for you is, what are your biggest easy take home lessons in relationship?
Yes. So in my newest book, That Sucked, Now What? There are a lot of sucky moments. And from somebody who has been married in the past, has had several failed relationships, where I can say the mantra, that sucked, now what? Um, as Ajit and I, my co-pilot, my partner, and I, and baby daddy, when we got together, we were so intentional about our routines as a couple and our rituals as a couple. So we used to do this a lot when we were, sans kiddos, but now having two small children, we've tweaked it a little bit. So instead of having our quarterly rituals where we would go away somewhere and we would do a spontaneous trip, but it would be for us to regroup, reconnect. Now we say, okay, we're going to do that at the end of the year. But can we commit to at least one or two? And if we're lucky, 3 date nights a month, right? We usually save Thursdays for a date night. I'm not going to lie to you and say we do it every single Thursday because life happens, but we're intentional. And when we're intentional, even in those 2 hours that we can grab for ourselves as a date night, because, babysitters, family support, whatever, we're so intentional at asking, how can I be a better partner? What did I do that, rocked you this week or that really triggered you this week? And how can I support you better? What do you need? And I think for both of us to actually take responsibility in that, and also desire to want to serve the other person in whatever way, I think that's the juicy.
Wow, so much juice there. I really heard presence and intention, and then certainly the rituals and routines there. Last question for you. You've nailed it so far. Is how does Dr. Neeta want to be remembered?
Ooh. As someone that has helped people find enthusiasm through their mess, the subtitle of my book is helping you find magic in your mess and, joy in chaos, and embracing the joy in chaos. And I think that's really, what I exude and what I embody. And I think when people are in my presence, they do leave a little bit more loved and nourished. So I would love to be remembered as, yeah, she was the queen of reinvention, but she actually made me feel really seen and heard. And I felt a lot of joy in her presence. So
Delicious. 5,000 plus points. You get dinner on me. Win the 5 to Thrive. And what a great way to transition into our conversation. She's the best-selling author of already 3 books. Her latest book is That Sucked. Now What? How to Embrace the Joy in Chaos and Find the Magic in the Mess. And it's going to release January 30 of this year. So go ahead and pre-order your copy now. And it's such an important message. I mean, if I look back at 2022, I've had 2 close friends passive suicide. Financially, I was rocked. Probably, from an external perspective, probably the most difficult year of my life. But through the growth that I've gotten over the past couple of years, I've definitely been able to weather that storm and really know now that it is the suck that has happened before that has really allowed me to become who I am. And I feel like so many people coming out of the pandemic now into the new year are reflecting those situations in their lives. The very first section of your book is really the magical moments of suck. Can you expand a little bit about that? What suck? I mean, as much as what you want to pull out your life story as well, because I know you've been through a lot with divorce and the loss of your parents and all that. Tell us about why the suck is really the magical moments for us.
Oof. Well, I mean, just like you said, Kien, and I just want to honor you and being so vulnerable and sharing that, because I think for a lot of people, loss is inevitable, but it still sucks. And I think for so many of us coming out of a state of, and you talk about thrive state, and I talk about thriving as one of the stages as we fly forward. But before we fly forward, we have to embrace the suck that we're in. So whether it's financial woes, whether it's relationship, whether it's transitions of, and it doesn't have to be, as tragic as a loss. I mean, you and I have both been through some losses, and much of my childhood was really I mean, that was the foray of giving birth to this more resilient part of me, because I had to grow up early. At 10 years old, I was a caretaker to my mom. And my family was, they were immigrants. My dad was from India, my mom was from the Philippines. And I think many times when we're coming from those cultures, it's survival because they're just trying to acclimate to a new environment. They're just trying to you know, get us through school and try to, be one with the Joneses. And I think at the end of it, there is a little bit of that internal struggle. So we as children, at least my experience of that, I had no idea how to cope when shit actually happened, when things didn't go my way, and many times it didn't. And so for me, it was a lot of times, all right, let's shove it under a rug. Let's shove what I'm really feeling under a rug and not embrace it fully. And so when my mom actually died at, 16, then a year later, I'm losing my brother to an asthma attack. And then 2 years later, I'm actually going through, loss again when my father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And it was just like so much of this big, awful, just pain as a young person. Plus, I then was a caretaker to my younger brother. And so through these moments that sucked, I think my through line, and maybe for people who are listening, maybe there is that one or two people that they reached out when something bad was happening. And for me, it was all of my relationships. And when I was, as long as I can remember, 16 years old, people were around us in the ICU for my mom. They're singing, they've got their guitars, their violins. My mom's Filipino. So they brought the keyboard. We're creating, performing for the nurses in the room to see her transition. It was, a painful and bittersweet surrender, but that was those relationships. And every single touch point, when I lost my brother, when I lost my dad. And so you can see there were magical moments, even through the death, even through the loss. And when I talk about magical moments in the book, it's not to say, oh, wow, let's stay in the pity party, because believe me, I know what the world of a victim looks like. I was in a domestic violence, abusive relationship. I had to get a restraining order, and this happened a decade later. But it was all because when we have, the cliche of a breakdown, when we're actually at, we're at actually on our knees, and the pain is so big that we actually need to let people in. And that's what I did every single time. I let people in. I got a little bit more vulnerable. I shared the things that I was so ashamed of. I thought I was going to be judged, that people weren't going to, like me. Losing young people, losing parents when you're a young person yourself, all you want to do is fit in, especially, being Asian, you're already kind of sticking out, as at least that back then. It wasn't cool like it is now to be Asian with BTS and K-dramas and Bollywood and all of the things. It was tough back then, and all you want to do is fit in. And so I think really leaning into those relationships, whether it's one or two that support you, has really helped a lot of my students define, all right, what are those magical moments that actually contributed to who you are today?
Yeah. So let me ask you, when you went through so many sucky moments prior to the divorce, and then you find yourself in that abusive relationship, would you say at that moment in time you had the consciousness to recognize the suck that you were in, or would you say it was still part of that growth process and really going through that pain and having the wisdom that you do now in retrospect?
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator.
The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive State is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah. So this is a perfect question because I want to share a story of a time when I actually started to put the building blocks of my life together. I remember I was 20 years old, and this was literally not even less than a year that my father passed away. He died when I was 19. And I just remember this cloud of like this suck over me. And it was just so thick. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm not, like, seriously, this is what's happening. This is my reality. And I was just so defeated. I was so hopeless. And I could see, friends of mine going on dates. They're traveling, and they're utilizing summer break and college break. And all I'd ever wanted to do was go away. I couldn't go away to college when I was applying to colleges when my brother had suddenly died of an asthma attack. I had to stay home. And after my father died, I was like, I am just done. So I convinced my aunt and my grandmother, who they were, helping take care of us at the time. And I said, I'm going to Italy. I'm going to go study abroad for a summer. It's for school, because of course, they would probably allow me to go for beefing up my resume. And so they actually said yes. And I remember landing in Roma, Italy that summer in June, the sweltering heat, all of the things. And I'm just looking around for the first time, and I'm like, oh man, this is liberation. This is what it feels like to actually like be free. And for me, it was huge because it was free of all of that pain and the darkness of constantly having to lose people within those 5-6 years. And so I talk about it as a concept in my book called the bounce factor. Mm-hmm. And in the bounce factor, I talk about it in 4 parts. And the first part to building resiliency is not having to be so tough, right? And we think resiliency is toughness, but yeah, it's toughness, but it's a little bit more than that. If you take a ball, like one of those squeezy stress balls, or the ones that you and I have small kids, the ones that you get from like a gumball machine and they like bounce really high. Well, if you take that ball and let it go, it's going to bounce. But if you take that same ball that's made out of glass or granite and let it go, guess what it's going to do? It's going to shatter into a million pieces. So being tough still breaks, but being resilient, like in Latin, resiliere, to bounce, allows you to be agile and flow. And so this is my first time in my life where I wasn't so rigid because I didn't have to be. It's like I had wings on my back and I was starting to spread. And so the bounce factor, when I talk about it in the book, first, you have to get clear with your upbringing. And for me, being in Italy, knowing that like my aunts and my family members, this was the life that they were living in. This was the bubble that they were living in. It was dark, it was heavy, it was a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. And then I get into the second part is current environment. What does your environment look like? You talk a lot about this in your book, as well as thrive state, but we have to change our state. And for me at 19 years old, 20 years old, I was like, I needed to get out of my current environment because my soul needed something different. So and I'm not saying everybody needs to go to, Italy, but maybe you do, or maybe you can just go down the street, or maybe you can actually go and try a different hobby, go and get back on that bike, something that lights you up and turns you on in ways that you are seeing a different perspective. Because when I was in Italy, yeah, people were asking me, hey, where are you from? Oh, okay. Tell me about your family. And so there were still those questions where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be the one that like has to share about her parents dying. And I'm like, I don't even want to talk about it. But that's where I decided that I could actually control the narrative. I could actually flip it back to them and be the greatest question asker, be the greatest listener, and in many ways realize that, hey, we all have stories. There were people from all over the world. And so again, going bigger, expanding your current environment, which gets me to phase 3 of the bounce factor, which is stretching your emotional capacity to feel. One of the things that I did when we were in Italy, I took an Italian philosophy class because, that's what you do. And that's where I learned about Marcus Aurelius, the Stoics. And for me, it was the first time where I started saying, gosh, okay, instead of why me, why is this happening? Why not me? Why not me? That maybe, there are angels now watching over me. So that was the first time that I started to spin that. And there was the depths of my emotions that I was able to feel, not because I was guilty for leaving my family, but because now I was able to process and actually sit with the moments that sucked to start to then transform this amor fati, love of one's fate, that these Stoics were preaching in my Italian philosophies class, to then go into step 4 of the bounce factor, which is really my curriculum for life. But it's your radical self-awareness. So for me to actually find the tools there in Italy that was going to light me up, and that's where I had the love of travel, because ever since that trip, I made it a point now then for the last 15 years, we made it to Europe every year and without fail. And it was, whether it was a week, 2 weeks, that was my happy place. Again, not saying everybody should go there, but making rituals that work for you. And it could look so different. It could be picking up a book and reading that same book and gaining perspective, or signing up for a class that lights you up, or that painting or crocheting or weightlifting or, cold plunging, whatever it is, but creating that new wiring for yourself so that what's actually in alignment. And also at the end of the day, you actually are having yourself be more aware of the people around you, because, you're like, well, maybe that person isn't really lighting me up, and maybe I should limit my energy with them. And so all encompassing, that builds our bounce factor.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I think that really is the key to resilience, is this true radical awareness in you, and being able to just embrace and recognizing that you don't necessarily need to fear or run away from those emotions. And then as you can really sit in them, you can really allow new choices for yourself rather than run away. What I love about this book is your fly forward framework. that starts with the very first thing, which is falling. And from that place of falling, and you put it so elegantly, but you've got 5 crystal clear steps that that falling is really a part of the first step. And I think it allows people to reframe falling as a stepping stone to thriving. So let's briefly hit on each one of these things, beginning with falling.
Yeah, well, we're always afraid to fall, right? And you and I both have like 2-year-olds. They're not afraid to fall. They aren't. They fall and they get right back up. And that's the beauty of it. As adults, we're so conditioned like, oh my gosh, if I make this mistake, if I do this thing, what's going to happen? And then we judge ourselves. And then we go into our little spiral of thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. I'm not worthy. Things are just never going to work out for me. But what if we embrace the fall?
Yeah.
Because when we have a fall, we know that there is something else that is getting asked of us. There's a different responsibility that's getting asked of us. There's a different aspect of ourself that's getting turned on to then step 2, ignite. And ignition can look like leaving a relationship that no longer serves you. Hi, I did that. It could look like leaving a job. It could look like maybe getting that coach to help you build your muscle and build your gains because you can't do it alone. So it's making a choice for yourself that's going to be uncomfortable. So step 3, when you say yes to that uncomfortable choice, then you're actually rising. So step 3 is rising, because rising means you're leaning into the discomfort. It's kind of like the first few weeks when you're actually starting out that new routine. You're sore. You want to stay in bed. You don't want to get up. You want to sleep in. You want to cheat your meals. Yet you know that there's rewards coming if you're sticking with it. And you're so adamant and you're so unapologetic and you're embracing this new reality. So you're accepting where you're at. You know that you're not perfect and you know that you're still a little wobbly, but you're accepting. And then stage 4 is that magnify stage. And what I mean by magnify is you're now starting to build this newfound confidence because you're saying, okay, I'm learning. And every day you're leading with curiosity. And then that leads to stage 5, thriving, where you know that you're not immune to a fall. Like you're like, bring it on. And you're saying, okay, this is part of my life's work. I am saying yes, but you're not making it about you anymore. It's about paying it forward for other people. So maybe you start a podcast. Maybe you start sharing your story and you put it in the form of a book. Maybe you start writing an article for your local newspaper. Maybe you start volunteering at an organization because you want to pay your story forward to somebody else.
Oh, so beautiful. And as you were saying all that and describing the thriving, state, I was starting to get goosebumps, because I was reflecting in my life where in the process I was falling, igniting, rising, magnifying, and then thriving. And for anybody who's going through the process, I want you to listen to this part again, because falling could be a place where you feel victimized and you don't want to get up, you don't want to do that next thing. But when you have this other choice and recognize the fall is really the signal to the thrive, and the earlier you can get to that, you can recognize that the fall is really about your growth. I'm really in that state in now when I look back at 2022 and it's like, wow, I have fell from such a great distance in some ways in 2022, but my fortitude in my emotional, physical, mental state has never been firmer. And my ability or my awareness that I am now thriving is a little less shakable. So this is an amazing thing. And I think for anybody, you need to pick up this book, That Suck, Now What? Because it's really going to give you the tools to recognize that the suck will come and how to grow from the suck instead of run away from it. Such beautiful work, Dr. Neeta. Now, before I ask my last question, when exactly does the book launch again? What is all the projects that you're up to now, and how do people find out more about the work that you do and what you offer?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, come aboard the train and build your mental health with us. We're at globalgrit.co, and you can find me at Neeta Bhushan. And actually, when you pre-order the book, it comes out January 31st. And when you pre-order it, you get 3 juicy bonuses. So to go deeper, even in the book's content, we actually have a full 44-page, beautifully designed guide to actually go deeper. So we talked a little bit about trauma. We talked a little bit about your inner child. We talked a little bit about what makes you come alive, and to actually go through the steps of Fly Forward and even the bounce factor to see where in your life that you can actually enhance yourself. It's such a juicy tool. And then it also comes with my 5-day Fly Forward practice. It's my healing practice. So it's 5 days of meditations, affirmations, visualizations, to heal your relationships, to take brave action, and to call in abundance and to center yourself so that we're actually calming and regulating our nervous system. And yes, so definitely hit me up. And also you can listen to my Brave Table episodes. We release one actually twice a week. We have brave conversations there.
Oh, beautiful. And I am very curious to your answer to this very last question. I end the show with all the lessons in life, with all the personal transformation, all the biohacks, all the self-care routines, all of it. What has been your best medicine?
Honestly, my best medicine is just to be around water. And I feel like, I am a water baby. I've always grown up by the water. And it's interesting, even, now that we're in an area of Texas where it's not as close to water as I was in Chicago or the Bay Area or even LA, but to even surround yourself with the medicine that really is rejuvenating for you. So for me, it's a bath. For me, it is allowing myself, even that 5 minutes of just having the shower beat down my shoulders and my back. Because if we use water as a metaphor of just going with the flow, and the concept that I talk about of resiliency, of just being one with the flow and being agile, and also allowing that water to transform, transmute, and shift the energy. It's also used as a cleansing mechanism. So for me, it is the purest form of medicine for my soul and for my daily practice and for my self-care.
Oh, beautiful. Everybody, you need to pre-order your copy of That Sucks. Now What? Dr. Neeta, thank you for being on the Thrive State podcast.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Kien. It was so good to dive in with you, love.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities and my high profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.